The 6,000th time, the question of the morning is, which quarterback has started the most regular season games against a single team in the Super Bowl era?
I'm not falling for it. I'm not going to say Eli versus the Eagles, which might be stupid. I'm saying Tom Brady, who's played the Dolphins 400 times.
You did a good job of not falling for Eli. But the answer is Brett Favre. Brett Favre has started 36 games against the Bears.
Laura, I told you.
You actually did.
He played for Green Bay and Minnesota in his career. Eli Manning started his 30th game
now he
against
sells
the
Tommy
Eagles
Cropper. It's great.
Yesterday. And Laura, how did Eli do against the Eagles yesterday?
Yeah, he didn't do so well. And here's the thing, Greeny. I'm going to help our buddy Dan out because he gets to talk about his best friend Carson Wentz right here once more. Let's remind you how well he was last night when sneaking it over the line for a big first down there, Dan.
And I love this throw to Arcega-Whiteside down the sideline. Just ball placement. I mean, that's the only place you could throw it. Good job by him kind of falling into this catch. And I love this ball down the seam. Put your back foot in the ground. Drive it down the seam to Goddard. Hold him up against the safety. Big time throw.
That was a gain of 28 down to the 13-yard line. Later in the drive, under 2 minutes to play here and finding his boy Zach Ertz.
And the only guy open. The only place you could throw that football with the defender barreling down on him. Big time step up throw.
That means we're going to overtime. The first play of OT wins. Finding Miles Sanders there.
Yeah, I like this play design. It was really kind of like a design screen. Those two receivers are blocking. Get it out to Miles Sanders in the flat. I love the play action movement for Carson Wentz, something he does really well.
A gain of 13 there to Josh Perkins. And then second and goal for the Eagles here. Wentz finding Ertz once again.
Yeah, this is a play that he's brought over from North Dakota State, which he loved. It's a big red zone concept for them. They motion Ertz down, and obviously a game-winning touchdown.
Huge for the Eagles, and the win pulls Philly into a tie with the Cowboys for first place in the NFC East. Dallas, however, currently in the playoff picture, having won their first meeting this season. According to FBI, the chances to make the playoffs are Cowboys 67%, Philly 33%.
And the Eagles at this point are just a walking mash unit. And I want to quickly bring Dan Graziano into the conversation to set up what we want to talk about, because I'm sure there were a lot of people thinking what we were thinking this morning, and that is, might they try or they consider trying to sign Antonio Brown? Dan, where is the latest as far as Brown is concerned with the league?
Well, we're waiting to find out, Greeny, if the league is going to suspend Antonio Brown or not for all the issues that came up earlier this year regarding his off-field conduct, two women accusing him of inappropriate behavior toward them. The league investigating that has yet to rule. So because they have yet to rule on potential discipline, if a team were to sign Antonio Brown today, hypothetically, he would be put on the commissioner's exempt list until that investigation is complete and a decision on discipline was made. So that's a big reason why you haven't seen teams move to do that, because at this point they don't know how long he would theoretically be out, and they wouldn't be able to use him immediately anyway. The other reason is because, honestly, I mean, the stuff he's being accused of and being investigated for is stuff that some teams don't want to be associated with. So it's not as cut and dried as the Eagles need help, they should sign Antonio Brown. There's a lot of questions still to be answered about whether you want him on your team at all, and if you do, whether he would even be available to you, and if so, when.
Correct, of course. All that stuff is more important than any of the football piece. But as far as the NFL is concerned, it would seem to me there isn't a great urgency to complete their investigation if no one is trying to sign him. If a team like the Eagles were to inquire with the NFL, hey, we'd like to make a move here, would that hasten some sort of decision on the part of the National Football League?
Well, when you talk to people at the NFL, of course, they're going to say no, that their investigation is going to take a certain amount of time, and that's why the delay is. It's not a question of, oh, can we move this along so we know whether we can sign him or not. The league wants to get these kinds of investigations right. There are examples in the past of them not getting these kinds of investigations right, and we all know about those. But, yeah, I think at this point it's a matter of the league proceeding with, if a team is calling the NFL, and I'm sure teams are, I know for a fact teams are, if a team's calling the NFL and saying, what's the deal with Antonio Brown, when are we going to know something, the answer they're getting is when we're done with the investigation, and that's the best we can give you.
Do we know which teams?
I don't. Not to a reportable extent. No, I do not know that.
Fair enough. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Dan, thank you. We'll come back to you as we go. Desmond, let me turn to you as the receiver sitting here at the table. And obviously, I should preface everything by saying if an NFL team doesn't want any part of Antonio Brown because of the accusations that are involved here, that is fully understandable and infinitely more important than football. But if someone were to be interested, As a wide receiver, could you come in with 3 games to play and learn in an entirely new offense, get comfortable with a new court? Is it reasonable to think that Antonio Brown could show up in Philadelphia tomorrow and actually make a difference?
Absolutely. You know why? Because I believe, and Dan, you can attest to this, they would water down the playbook and make sure that he understands certain plays that he's comfortable with, things that are conceptual to what he's consistently run throughout his career. Plays that he knows that, okay, I'm good with these routes, outside routes, and then they will just tailor a game plan for AB. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy, right? I mean, hey, I'm really good at these 6 routes. Yeah, you go and line up there, and if it's man-to-man coverage, go win against that guy running one of those 6 routes. I would not touch AB. I've said that repetitively. Let's bring it to the Eagles, right, who obviously coming off last night have wide receiver issues.
Yeah.
I think the performance by Greg Ward and Pickens, the tight end, and Arcega-Whiteside, because they finally did it, right? I think it could be to them, to the Eagles, and to those players going, all right, they had their moment, they had their opportunity, they showed it. Let's build off that rather than they're not a Super Bowl contending football team right now, and so AB's not going to put them over the edge of being fringe Super Bowl or not.
Yeah, and you just heard Dan Graziano say teams are inquiring with the NFL, but I've said all along, to me, it would be an enormous surprise if Antonio Brown plays again in the NFL this season. Let's move on to a next topic here, and that would be Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, who continues to generate controversy this Sunday, throwing his own team's medical staff under the bus, blaming them, at least in part, for Odell Beckham's injury issues this year. This all happened following a win against the Bengals. Yesterday, his coach, Freddie Kitchens, had this to say.
He understands that we don't want him addressing other players' injuries in that manner, especially. Odell and our training staff have done a tremendous job of getting Odell to the game each and every week.
Now, Baker appeared poised to flourish in his second season with the Browns. All these weapons they bring in on offense. Instead, look at these numbers. He is dead last in touchdown to interception ratio, 16 picks, 15 touchdowns this year, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You could make an argument based upon expectation and conversation that there was no greater disappointment in the National Football League this year than the Cleveland Browns. So let's start with this. If we do believe that Baker needs someone else to come in there and start him up again, and that the team needs a fresh voice. I'm not firing Freddie Kitchens at this moment, but it does feel likely that's going to happen. Who do you believe is the right person to come in and do that?
Lincoln Riley or Jim Harbaugh? Those are the 2 names that are the most relevant to me, the 2 names that I think have a chance. Because Lincoln Riley obviously has his history with Baker Mayfield. He understands him. I think he's been one of the guys that has been able to get Baker Mayfield to understand accountability and some maturity. And then Harbaugh, because there's some uniqueness to him. He's been in the public eye for a long time. He's got some quirkiness and understands that position and the demands of it. And he's obviously had a ton of success. Those would be the 2 guys that I think, like, Baker, I need you to be accountable and I need you to be mature for the things that you do.
So those are 2 college coaches. Laura, you have any other ones?
Look, Lincoln Riley is the obvious choice because of his history there, but I would actually throw out Ryan Day, the Ohio State head coach. What he's done with Justin Fields, somebody who needed to focus on learning an offensive playbook and really has ended up, having great success this year. He's going to be a Heisman finalist. I think he could go in there, really work with Baker. And look, Baker's going to probably get where they want him to get if they're having success offensively. Ryan Day, a great offensive mind, and also somebody that I think Baker would want to play for. I'd like to see that happen.
Paul, your thoughts on Baker Mayfield? Obviously, you cover the college game first and foremost. Super high profile. Your thoughts?
I think he's flawed, and I'll blame Baker for some of it, but I'm really going to blame the owner of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Haslam. And I know this family very well, and I also covered Freddie Kitchens in high school and in college. And I believe he is truly one of the worst hires in NFL history. I don't know why the Haslams thought he was going to be successful, because he had some success with Baker last year. They're getting what they deserve, and it's not a matter of when or if he's going to get fired. He's going to be gone. And I just think Ryan Day is unique. I don't see Lincoln Riley wanting to have anything to do with the Cleveland Browns.
Des, what do you think?
RD, I mean, check this out. I'm from Cleveland, right? And when I first heard that they were getting OBJ, Jarvis Landry was there, I thought this was destined to fail out the gate. Let me tell you why. I wouldn't say Baker is immature, but I would say he lacks professional maturity.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who lacks professional maturity, you need to put somebody around him that can teach him to be a pro. So if you're going to bring in a receiver, you need to bring in like a Larry Fitzgerald. You need to bring in somebody that's going to respect in the locker room. You understand what I'm saying? And then you got to have a coach. Now, you talked about Ryan. Don't forget, now, this guy, Baker Mayfield, he holds grudges. That's an Ohio State coach.
I know where you're going
that
here.
flag. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you're going to
Really
get a
good
coach.
point.
You need someone,
You can teach him not to
who is
plant
an
the flag.
alpha male
That's
who's
gonna carry
going to warrant that type of respect. Not saying that this guy's going to leave Pittsburgh, but a guy like a Mike Tomlin who's going to go in there and put you in your place and make sure you respect the franchise, especially if you're the face of the franchise.
That is a really interesting thought on so many different levels. And Dan, I'll leave it with you here as the quarterback, because I've been saying since this all began, I'm not suggesting Baker Mayfield can't be the way he is and succeed. I'm merely suggesting no quarterback ever has before. Is there anyone who can tell him, dude, you got to stop some of this stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Mike Tomlin's a great one. It's up to Baker to. The professional maturity is a great point. Will he listen? I think this year is a really impactful year for him, because this is the first year that he's been really struggling. Even from Texas Tech to Oklahoma, like, he's been a big part of that struggle, right? And he was chosen, number one, to make sure that that was no longer being the case. So Baker's got to look at himself in the mirror here.
Yeah.
Like, Baker's got to look at himself and go, how can I be better? How can I stop complaining about everything else that's around me and start making sure that I'm building everything up that is there? Listen, is President Obama available? Maybe he could be the guy to get through to Baker Mayfield when it
probably
comes
be a
to
good
accountability.
I heard he's free. He doesn't have a job. Yeah.
He is available.
Yeah, he's available. Exactly.
Maybe we go there.
It's a very interesting conversation, right? I think it's more about someone talking to him, whether it's his coach or not, that he listens to. In the meantime, we'll talk about another quarterback, Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, favored over Ohio State.